17 years after they wheeled Michael Jackson into UCLA and pronounced him dead, the nurse who treated him in the final months is speaking again. Not about rumors, not about theories, about what she saw with her own eyes and heard with her own ears. She looked him in the face and told him the drug he was begging for could kill him. She felt a literal chill run through her body the second the words left her mouth. 4 days before he died, she heard his voice on the phone describing something that still haunts her. One side of his body burning hot, the other side ice cold, and she still can't accept the official story. Because the man she warned was left alone in a bedroom with a surgical anesthetic, while the person responsible waited over an hour to call for help. What she saw wasn't a tragic accident. What she saw was a man who had already been told the truth, and still went looking for the same needle. This is the story they never fully told you. If you want the real, unfiltered truth about the legends they tried to bury, subscribe to Black Legend right now and turn on the notifications. Because what comes next will change how you see that final night forever. Chapter 1. The Nurse Who Walked Into the House. In February 2009, a woman named Sherilyn Lee stepped through the gates of a rented mansion on North Carrollwood Drive in Holmby Hills. She was a registered nurse and nurse practitioner who specialized in holistic care and nutritional therapy. She was not a celebrity doctor. She was not part of the inner circle that had surrounded Michael Jackson for decades. She was simply a nurse who had been asked to help a man who could no longer sleep. The request seemed straightforward. Michael Jackson was preparing for the most ambitious comeback of his life. 50 shows at the O2 Arena in London under the title, "This Is It." The rehearsals were already underway. The pressure was enormous. His body was running on almost nothing. Night after night, he managed only 2 or 3 hours of broken sleep before the exhaustion pulled him under again. Someone needed to keep him functioning. Someone needed to put nutrients into his veins so he could keep dancing, keep singing, keep moving toward opening night. Sherilyn Lee believed that someone was her. She arrived with her equipment, her notes, and a clear sense of purpose. Her job was to administer intravenous nutritional infusions, vitamins, minerals, the kind of support that could help a body under extreme stress recover just enough to face another day. She kept detailed records of every visit, times, observations, what she gave him, how he responded. She treated the work the way a careful nurse treats any patient, with attention, with documentation, with the quiet conviction that she was there to protect him. The house itself felt different from the moment she walked in. It was large and quiet in the way expensive houses often are, but the silence carried weight. Staff moved with purpose. The schedule never seemed to loosen. Michael Jackson was not the untouchable icon the world still saw on magazine covers. In those rooms, he was a man running on empty, trying to rebuild a career that had already taken almost everything from him. The performer the public remembered could still light up a stage. The man Sherilyn Lee met was fighting simply to stay upright. She began the infusions. She watched him. She listened. When the conversation turned to sleep, and it always did, she offered what she knew. Holistic approaches, natural methods, anything that might help him rest without the heavier medications that had already complicated his life for years. She believed the body could be supported. She believed careful care could make a difference. She believed in those early weeks that she had arrived in time. The days blurred into a rhythm. She would come to the mansion. She would prepare the IV. She would sit with him while the nutrients entered his system. Sometimes he talked. Sometimes he was too tired to say much. Always the same problem returned. The night would come, the mind would refuse to shut down, and morning would arrive with almost no rest in between. 2 hours, 3 hours. Then the exhaustion would settle over him again like a second skin. Sherilyn Lee wrote it all down. She noted the patterns. She tried new combinations of support. She treated him the way she treated every patient who came to her for help, as someone whose life still had value beyond the headlines. In her mind, she was not serving a legend. She was caring for a man who needed sleep so badly that the lack of it was beginning to show in every movement. What she could not see yet was how close the ending already was. The mansion on Carrollwood Drive was not a hospital. There was no crash cart waiting in the hallway. There was no team of specialists rotating through the night. There was only a rented house, a brutal rehearsal schedule, and a man who had already begun searching for something stronger than vitamins. Sherilyn Lee did not know the name of that something yet. She only knew that the patient in front of her was deteriorating under the weight of his own insomnia, and that the people around him seemed willing to accept almost any solution as long as the shows could still go on. She kept coming back. She kept giving the infusions. She kept writing her notes. She kept believing that careful, consistent care might still be enough. In February 2009, Sherilyn Lee walked into that house thinking she was helping Michael Jackson prepare for a comeback. She had no way of knowing she had just stepped into the final chapter of his life. The vitamins would continue for a while longer. The conversations about sleep would grow more urgent. And one afternoon in April, the man who could not rest would look at her and ask for a drug she had never expected to hear named inside a private home. But that moment still lay ahead. For now, there was only the quiet of the mansion, the steady drip of the IV, and a nurse who still believed she had arrived in time to protect him. Chapter 2. The Only Thing That Will Knock Me Out. The turning point did not arrive with a dramatic collapse or a public outburst. It arrived in the quiet of a bedroom after another night that had given Michael Jackson almost nothing. It was April 2009. Sherilyn Lee had already been coming to the Carrollwood mansion for weeks. The vitamin infusions continued. The notes continued. The same problem continued. 2 hours of sleep, sometimes 3. Then the exhaustion would return, heavier than before. On this particular night, she had stayed longer than usual, watching the pattern the way a careful nurse watches any patient who is slipping. He woke after only a few hours. The change in him was immediate. The soft, tired man who had accepted the IV earlier in the evening was gone. In his place was someone agitated, restless, almost desperate. He sat up. He looked at her. The words that came out of his mouth were not a vague request for something to help him rest. They were specific, precise, spoken with the certainty of a man who already knew exactly what he wanted. He did not ask for a pill. He asked for it by name. Diprivan, the milk. The drug used in operating rooms to put patients under before surgery. Michael Jackson told her it was the only thing that had ever made him fall asleep the way he needed to fall asleep. Instantly, completely, without the long, tortured wait for ordinary sedatives to take hold. He described the sensation in detail. The moment the drug entered the vein, he said, everything went dark. No drifting, no half-sleep, just sudden, total blackness. He had felt it once during a medical procedure years earlier, and he had never forgotten it. That was the sleep he wanted now. That was the only sleep that worked. Sherilyn Lee listened. She had never administered propofol in a private home. She had never even considered it. The drug belonged in hospitals, under controlled conditions, with monitoring equipment and trained anesthesiologists standing by. It was not a bedtime remedy. It was not something a nurse carried in a bag for late-night house calls. Yet the man in front of her was speaking about it the way other people speak about a familiar medicine they have taken for years. He told her doctors had already said it was safe, as long as someone monitored him. He repeated the condition like a reassurance. Monitored, with the right equipment, someone present to watch him. In his mind, the danger could be managed. In his mind, the only real problem was the insomnia that was destroying his ability to rehearse, to function, to prepare for the shows that were supposed to save everything. Lee did not accept the explanation. She left the room, went to her references, and opened the physician's desk reference, the thick, authoritative volume that lists every major medication, its uses, and its warnings. She looked up Diprivan. The language was clear and cold. Propofol was an intravenous anesthetic. It was indicated for the induction and maintenance of anesthesia or for sedation in controlled medical settings. It was not approved for the treatment of insomnia. It was not meant to be used in a bedroom. The risks were listed without softness: respiratory depression, cardiovascular complications, the possibility that a patient simply would not wake up. She returned to him with the information. She told him what this book said. She told him no responsible doctor would bring that drug into a private house and use it as a sleep aid. She told him the setting was wrong, the purpose was wrong, and the danger was real. Michael Jackson listened, but he did not change course. He had already decided. The only thing that would knock him out the way he needed was Diprivan. Everything else had failed. The vitamins helped his body. They did nothing for the long, empty hours of the night. The conversation stretched. He grew more insistent. He described again the feeling of the drug hitting the vein, the sudden darkness, the complete release from consciousness. He framed it as the one solution that had ever worked. He framed the monitoring as the safeguard that made everything acceptable. In his voice there was no sense that he was asking for something extreme. He spoke as if he were simply naming the only tool left that could give him what every human being needs: rest. Sherilyn Lee sat with the weight of what she was hearing. She was a nurse who had walked into that house believing she could help. She had given infusions. She had kept notes. She had tried the gentle approaches first. Now the patient in front of her was asking for a surgical anesthetic by its brand name and describing the exact moment it erased him from the world. The gap between the care she had come to provide and the request she was receiving felt sudden and absolute. She did not give him the drug. She would not. But the request had been made. The name had been spoken inside the house. And from that night forward, the shape of the danger was no longer abstract. It had a label. It had a description. It had a man who was willing to chase it because nothing else let him sleep. In the weeks that followed, Sherilyn Lee would return to the physician's desk reference more than once. She would repeat the warning. She would look at the same pages and feel the same unease. Michael Jackson would continue to insist that the drug was safe if only someone would stay and watch him. The rehearsals would continue. The exhaustion would continue. And the clock that neither of them could see would keep moving toward a morning in June when the same drug would be found in his system, and the monitoring he had spoken about would not be enough. But on that April night, the only thing that existed was the request itself. He did not ask for a pill. He asked for Diprivan. He described the darkness it brought. And for the first time, Sherilyn Lee understood that the man she was trying to protect was already reaching for something far beyond the reach of vitamins and careful notes. Chapters 3. The Warning and the 4:30 a.m. Image. The conversation that changed everything did not happen in a hospital or a courtroom. It happened in a quiet room inside the Carrollwood mansion, with only a nurse and a desperate man present. Sherilyn Lee sat close to Michael Jackson. She looked him in the eye. The physician's desk reference was no longer an abstract book on a shelf. The warnings were now personal. She had already told him the drug was not meant for a bedroom. Now she went further. She told him no ethical doctor would bring propofol into a private house and use it as a sleep aid. She told him the setting was wrong, the purpose was wrong, and the risk was absolute. Then she said the sentence that, 17 years later, still gives her chills when she remembers it. If you take that medicine, you might not wake up. The words left her mouth and something physical moved through her body. A cold, sudden recognition that she was no longer speaking in theory. She was naming the possible end of the man sitting in front of her. In later testimony, she would describe that moment as a chill that ran straight through her. It was not dramatic language. It was the body's reaction to saying the truth out loud in a room where the truth was not welcome. Michael Jackson did not accept it. He insisted he would be okay. He repeated the condition he had already given her. He only needed someone to monitor him with the proper equipment. In his mind, the danger could be managed. In his mind, the only real failure would be continuing to live on 2 or 3 hours of broken sleep while the largest comeback of his life demanded everything he had left. He asked her to do more than refuse. He asked her to solve the problem on his terms. Bring an anesthesiologist, he said. Stay overnight yourself. Watch him. Make it safe. Sherilyn Lee refused. She would not bring the drug. She would not arrange for someone else to bring it. She would not stay and supervise the very thing she had just called potentially fatal. That refusal marked the last time she ever saw Michael Jackson in person. The infusions stopped. The careful notes stopped. The nurse who had walked into the house believing she could protect him walked out knowing she had drawn a line he was not willing to respect. What happened in the days and weeks that followed has always lived in the space between testimony and rumor. Some people later claimed the house had already begun looking for other solutions before she left. Others whispered that the request for propofol had not begun with her, that the name had been spoken in the mansion before she ever opened the physician's desk reference. None of those claims were ever proven in court. What is documented is simpler and more devastating. The last face-to-face warning came from Sherilyn Lee, and after she refused, she was no longer part of the care around him. She did return one more time in a different capacity. On at least one night, she agreed to stay and observe his sleep pattern, not to give medication, only to watch. The goal was still the same: understand how little rest he was actually getting and whether anything short of the forbidden drug might help. She remained in the house while he tried to sleep. The hours passed. The pattern repeated itself with brutal consistency. At 4:30 in the morning, he woke. The image she later described in court has never lost its power. Michael Jackson suddenly stood up on the bed. In the dim light of the room, he stared at her with wide eyes. The agitation was immediate. The desperation was raw. He told her again what he had already told her in clearer moments. He could not sleep through the night. 2 hours, 3 hours, then the waking. He needed something that would knock him out completely. He needed Diprivan. Nothing else worked. Nothing else had ever worked the way that drug worked when it hit the vein. She looked at the man standing on the mattress in the dark and understood the distance between them had become permanent. She had given the warning. She had felt the chill. She had refused. Now he was standing in front of her at 4:30 a.m., still asking for the same thing. Sherilyn Lee left. She never went back to that house as his nurse. The visits ended. The notes ended. The direct attempts to protect him ended. 2 months later, on June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson was found unresponsive in a different bedroom of the same mansion. The drug she had refused to give him was in his system. The monitoring he had insisted would keep him safe had not been enough. The call for help came far too late. In the years that followed, rumors filled the gaps the official record left open. Some claimed other medical people had already been approached. Some claimed the house had normalized the use of the drug long before the final night. Some claimed the 4:30 a.m. scene was only one of many similar nights that never reached a courtroom. Sherilyn Lee never confirmed those stories. She only confirmed what she saw and what she said. She sat close to him. She looked him in the eye. She told him he might not wake up. She felt the chill. She refused. And at 4:30 in the morning, in the dark, she watched him stand on a bed and ask for the same needle one more time. That was the last image she carried with her when she walked out of the Carrollwood mansion for good. 2 months later, the world learned the rest. Chapter 4. The phone call 4 days before he died. 4 days before the world learned Michael Jackson was dead, Sherilyn Lee was more than 2,000 miles away from the Carrollwood mansion. She was in Florida, attending a medical conference, when her phone rang. The voice on the other end belonged to an aide from the household. The tone was already wrong. Urgent, strained, almost panicked. The message was simple and immediate. Michael needed to see her. He needed to see her right away. Something was wrong. Sherilyn Lee asked what was happening. In the background, behind the aide's voice, she could hear Michael Jackson himself. The words that reached her were fragmented but clear enough to stop everything. He was telling the person holding the phone to explain it to her. One side of his body was hot, burning hot. The other side was cold, very cold. The contrast was so sharp he kept repeating it, as if saying it twice would force the meaning across the distance. Lee listened. She had spent months watching his sleep patterns, listening to his complaints, documenting his exhaustion. She knew the sound of his voice when he was simply tired. This was different. The description he was giving, one side of the body hot, the other cold, was not ordinary fatigue. To a nurse, it pointed towards something affecting the central nervous system. It was the kind of symptom that did not belong in a private bedroom at home. It belonged in an emergency room. She told them to take him to the hospital. The instruction was direct. There was no soft language, no suggestion that they wait and see. She believed what she was hearing required immediate medical evaluation. She believed the symptoms were serious enough that delaying could be dangerous. She said it clearly. They did not take him. The call ended with the same unsettled feeling that had followed her since the night she first refused to give him propofol. She was far from Los Angeles. She no longer had access to the house. She no longer had the ability to walk into the room and look at him herself. All she had was a voice on the phone describing a body that no longer felt the same temperature on both sides, and the knowledge that the people around him had chosen not to follow the advice she had just given. In the hours and days that followed, the meaning of that call settled deeper. Sherilyn Lee began to believe that someone had already given Michael Jackson the drug she had refused. The hot and cold symptom fit too cleanly with what she knew about the effects of powerful central nervous system agents. Propofol, the very medication he had begged her for by name, could produce exactly the kind of neurological disruption he was now describing. She could not prove it from Florida. She could only recognize the pattern and feel the same chill that had moved through her the day she first said the words, "You might not wake up." She tried to follow up. She remained concerned. But the distance was absolute. The household that had once invited her in to give vitamin infusions no longer needed her presence. The man who had stood on a bed at 4:30 in the morning, insisting only Diprivan would work, was now, 4 days before his death, describing a body that felt split in temperature, and still no one was taking him to a hospital. On the morning of June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson was found unresponsive in his bedroom at the Carrollwood mansion. The drug Sherilyn Lee had warned him about was in his system. The monitoring he had once claimed would keep him safe had not prevented the outcome. The call for emergency help came long after the critical window had closed. When the news reached her, the phone call from 4 days earlier returned with full force. The frantic aid, the voice in the background, the repeated description of one side hot and one side cold, the clear instruction to go to the hospital, the decision not to go. 17 years later, that sequence remains one of the most haunting fragments in the final week of Michael Jackson's life. A nurse who had already refused to cross a line heard the symptoms of a body in trouble and named the next step. The people in the house did not take it. 4 days later, the same man was beyond any hospital's reach. Sherilyn Lee was not in the room when he stopped breathing. She was not the one who found him. She was not the one who delayed the call to 911. But she was the one who heard his voice describe a body that no longer felt whole. And she was the one who told them clearly what needed to happen next. They did not listen, and 4 days later, the story ended the way she had once feared it might. The official story has always been simple. A doctor gave Michael Jackson too much propofol, waited too long to call 911, and the singer died. Conrad Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served less than 2 years. Sherilyn Lee has never accepted that as the full truth. In her telling, the real deception is that the danger had already been named months earlier. She sat across from Michael, looked him in the eye, and told him the drug could kill him. She felt a chill when she said the words. She refused to be part of it. Yet the same path was still chosen. Murray administered propofol in a private bedroom as a sleep aid. More than 80 minutes passed after Jackson was found unresponsive before emergency services were called. Murray did not immediately tell paramedics about the propofol. The death was ruled a homicide. But Lee's point remains. The warning had already been given, the symptoms had already appeared, and a nurse had already walked away. 17 years later, the official timeline still begins on the morning of June 25th. Hers begins earlier, with a clear refusal, an ignored warning, and a house that continued down a road already marked as fatal. 17 years later, Sherilyn Lee's account has not changed. She warned him. She felt the chill. She heard the hot and cold call. She watched him stand on that bed at 4:30 in the morning, begging for the one drug she would not give. The questions that still hang in the air. If a nurse who loved him like family could see the ending coming, why did the people who stayed in that house keep going? Why was a surgical anesthetic being used as a bedtime story in a rented mansion instead of a hospital? And if he was already describing those symptoms 4 days earlier, how many chances did they really have? Michael Jackson wanted to sleep so he could perform. He wanted 8 hours, not 2. He wanted to be knocked out the moment the needle hit the vein. That is the last thing he asked for. It is also the last thing he received. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments. Which moment shocked you more? The warning, the 4:30 a.m. scene, or the phone call 4 days before he died? Subscribe if you want the next chapter on the people who were in that house when the clock ran out. Love one another, and never ignore a warning that comes with a chill.